a new person that Cece had never met had come over to our house, and I made a comment that oh, we love this person, and she obviously loves Cece. And then Lizzie made a comment. Well, she said, "Who wouldn't love Cece?" And it's true. You come in contact with Cece, and it's an instant connection that you have, and then all of a sudden you belong to all the happiness that Cece creates.
All the happiness that Cece creates. I love the end of that quote. All you have to do is take a look at some pictures of Cece, and you will see the love in her eyes and the joy in those around her. My name is Seth Carnell, and this is the Go Shout Love podcast. Welcome to part 2 of the conversation with Louie and Lizzie. They are the parents to Cece. If you haven't listened to part 1, please consider pausing this to go back an episode. It provides background, context, and some good moments that will lead you into this episode. Cecily, or Cece, is our feature kiddo for the month of September 2021, and she has Pitt Hopkins Syndrome. This diagnosis comes with its challenges, and that is how this episode starts off, with some difficulties and how this family is overcoming some of those. But the journey doesn't begin and end with challenges and difficulties. Those are elements involved. But other elements that are also very present are the joys, the positives, the love. That is what this episode is. It is a great insight into the life of a beautiful girl like Cece, someone who will brighten your day. This episode also tackles a very big topic of belonging and what that really means to families like Cecily's. But it doesn't stop there. Belonging is for everyone and is something everyone deserves, and how we can all have an impact on that. There is a lot in this episode that we really haven't covered in the same way, and I encourage you to be engaged with what Louie and Lizzie have to say. Leading this conversation is Josh Veach. Please take a second to rate, review, and share this podcast so that the words of these two parents and the story of Cece can reach as far as possible.
Liz, you mentioned that getting the news that Cecily, it's likely that she wouldn't be able to verbally communicate was obviously really difficult. And you talking about your background in writing and communication, I'm sure that probably is maybe a little extra difficult from your standpoint. And I'm curious, how has that news and that reality changed how you communicate and how you maybe express love for Cecily?
Yeah, I mean, it was really hard. We talk sometimes about, different people have their different love language. Mm-hmm. But what do you do when your love language is language, which is what mine is. It's still hard sometimes. I remember when Daphne was really young at the time, and it wasn't like a thing we had to tell her at once. It was kind of, she already knew that Cecily had lots of therapists, and, we didn't sit her down and have a big talk. I think we just kind of slowly sprinkled the information to her as we had it. Eventually we talked about what Pitt Hopkins meant, and, she wanted to know Daphne wanted to know if she had it and if she could get it and stuff. But, Daphne was, when she was sad, when we explained that we didn't think Cecily was going to learn to talk. I mean, she had a look of panic on her face, and she said, how will she say I love you to me? And, that was the question I had too, and I didn't have a great answer for that. Sure. And it's still hard. I think we see as she gets older and as we learn more, it sounds like a platitude, but, she says she loves you in different ways. She burrows in for a hug. She looks deep in your eyes. I mean, she's really, it's there. You just have to kind of be able to listen in a different way.
Yeah, she doesn't communicate through language, but she communicates through her physicality. 100%. You can see it in her eyes. You can see it the way she currently sits up really well. It took a long time for her to get there, but she sits up well. And then you can see her physically scooting her entire body towards the person that she wants to interact with. It'll take her 5 minutes, 10 minutes, but you'll turn around and then you'll come back and she's scooted 5 feet towards Daphne to be able to just nuzzle up into her. So she's a physical communicator with her hugs and her love.
Before COVID, we would be traveling to meet you guys and get to meet Cecily in person. And a few years ago, we got to meet another Pitt Hopkins kiddo named Sophia. And to this day, getting to hold her, that you reference how Cecily just looks deeply into your eyes. I've never experienced that in the same way that I did with Sophia. I held her and she looked into my eyes and she felt my cheeks and she it was just like she was fully present. It was like there was no distractions, nothing else going on. She was just fully into that moment. Yeah, it's and so I'm assuming that's maybe Cecily has some of the same characteristics as far as that just deep engagement, so like you're saying, communicating in the physical, just deeply present and deeply involved in that interaction when she's burrowing or maybe touching the face or anything like that.
Yeah. So Sophia's mom is my best friend I've never met because we have only met online, and she's not that far from us, and we talked about a couple of times, and then a pandemic got in the way of that.
Yeah.
So but we that's it. My brother Cecily, I don't know if we mentioned this when we talked about her personality, but Cecily loves swimming. It's right up there. It's her favorite thing to do. She just loves it. And my brother loves swimming. So my brother, he does a lot of aqua jogging. So he'll be in the water for hours. And so we'll put Cece on a float and Cecily will just float next to him. And the two of them will just put their foreheads next to each other and just stare at each other an hour and a half, just smiling in the water. And Nick said something similar to that. When he gets out, he's like, I don't think, any woman will ever look at me the way Cecily looks at me. No one will ever love me this much.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. She's everyone's.
That's awesome. That's cool. I want to shift a little bit. And you even alluded to this, when it came to the daycare situation of not having a place, after the diagnosis. And so I want to shift the conversation a little bit to talk about inclusion and really beyond that. I wonder if you could speak to the word belong and belonging. As you've navigated this journey with Cecily, how would you describe what it means to belong, and how is that important to someone's life? And if so, what ways?
I hear two questions there. One about mentioning the daycare and stuff,
Yeah, I think let me rephrase that to ask the belonging question first, okay. Because I want to get to I think I'm framing the question is there's the tangible inclusion element that is these physical, tangible, having opportunity to, a school to go to, but there's the deeper personal element of that I think is what makes inclusion important, is the belonging element of what does it mean to belong? Is that important? And if so, in what ways?
You want me to go?
Sure. Now that you're paying attention.
I think Cece, I think she belongs to, first and foremost, she belongs to her family and she belongs to her friends, but she also belongs to the community. I think the community has done a phenomenal job of accepting her. And that's not just Daphne's friends who love her, and it's not just our friends who love her. It's everybody in Saratoga Springs who comes in contact with her, whether it's through charity events that Lizzie has put on, or including her in T-ball, when they didn't have to, accepting her onto the team and letting her do all the things that all the other kids do. I think she belongs to the community at this point in the most positive way possible. And a lot of that is through the advocating that Lizzie does, but it's also just through the kind of person that Cece is. If we were talking about the other day, a new person that Cece had never met had come over to our house, and I made a comment that we love this person, and she obviously loves Cece. And then Lizzie made a comment. Well, she said, who wouldn't love Cece? And it's true. You come in contact with Cece, and it's an instant connection that you have. And then all of a sudden you belong to all the happiness that Cece creates wherever she is. Right. I don't know, I'm kind of rambling a little bit, but she definitely belongs to the community in that sense.
Yeah.
Elizabeth.
Thank you, Lewis. Is belonging important? Ask that about your own life. Of course it is, right? Some of the hardest phases anyone has had in their history has probably been a time where they've been, felt peripheral or not been a part of some community. Of course it is. And it's not once again, I feel concerned sometimes for families and kids that don't have all the things that Cecily does, which is for instance, we mentioned insurance and all those things that really helped us with the medical part. But for this part too, it's sometimes we have to remind people or places that she belongs, right? When I go places that don't have a wheelchair access, I let the owners know, usually in a nice tone, but also with kind of a snarky eye, pull it together, guys, and you have to remind places that not every kid is going to use the same equipment, and you have to make things accessible, and you have to do it not to check off a box to say that you're even though legally you have to check off a lot of ADA compliance boxes, but we're in this great era right now. We're in an era of celebrating diversity, and people, diversity is not limited to race, which is where I still think a lot of people think that conversation starts, right? Mm-hmm. Diversity in citizenship, diversity in body size, diversity in ability, diversity in family structure, that there's we're all working to try to make this world inclusive so that everybody belongs and that everybody can be a part of things, and not, kept at the periphery of things. So this is just one example of that. But
yeah,
go out of, and there's so many things places can do, go out of your way to include and invite people with different abilities. There was a road race in town. I emailed, and it's a kids road race. And I emailed and I was like, hey, you guys are fundraising for a hospital. Might be really great if you made an all abilities race, or if you included on your message, we actively invite anybody, wheels or gait trainer or whatever you need to participate in this race. And for the most part, people they like these ideas. They're receptive, right? They're like, wow, a lot of times they just haven't thought of it. I took my kids to a spray ground the other day, and all of the handicap accessible spots, the whole parking lot adjacent to the spray ground was blocked off. I don't know why. They had cones up or something. And I was like, I'm not going to park. I've got 3 kids. One of them uses a wheelchair. I'm not parking a quarter mile away. And I went right up to those cones and I walked inside the building and I very politely said, your handicapped spots are blocked off. And they were like, oh, and they just didn't think of it because they had to be reminded that children in wheelchairs still go to the spray ground. And they came right out and they very, cordially removed the cones and made the spots accessible. And so, if it's not a part of your daily life, you have to sometimes be reminded, that you can take down barriers, take them down physically, and then you take them down metaphorically as well.
Right. Yeah. This journey has taught me a lot just in getting to know families over the last few years. And it has completely shifted. I oftentimes will work at a coffee shop, and where I sit, it views over the parking lot, and I see so many folks that just like will pull into the striped spots in between the handicapped spots, and they won't park there, but they'll just like stop there and like run in and get their coffee. You know, it's not like they're staying there for hours, but it's like it would have never bothered me before. I wouldn't have done it just because I don't want the kind. I don't want to be on the receiving end of want to lose tickets. But yes. Now I'm more afraid of the mom's wrath than I am of the officer's tickets. But I totally understand it. It has completely shifted my perspective that is a designated space for a designated purpose. And it's an awareness, and like you said, Liz, if it's not part of your day-to-day life, you just accept it as normal because it's never been a barrier for you. But when you've recognized it and you learn about those things, it definitely changes the view. And one of those things too is like how we teach our kids, how we expose our kids to things that are different than maybe what they see on a regular basis. And I wonder, specifically with Daphne being older, have there been any experiences where either accidentally or intentionally, you've helped her learn those things, maybe especially when it comes to issues of that impact people with different abilities, where you have introduced her or exposed her to different things that have help her learn what's more normal and accepting than maybe what at a different age than maybe you would have experienced otherwise. Does that make sense?
Yep. So it's funny. I have a interesting story about this. I'm pretty sure this was either before Cecily was born or before we had any idea of, what type of life Cecily was going to live. Daphne and I were out at a store, and she saw a woman who was a dwarf, and Daphne was, just an innocent little girl, and was like, "Oh my gosh, Mama, look how short that woman is." And she's pointing and she's asking all these questions. And I am just like, oh my God, mortified. I don't know what to do, And so I just like kind of did all the wrong things. I just hurried out of the store and like made a big fuss. And, I was embarrassed, and I wasn't mad at Daphne. Daphne clearly had never seen a woman who was a dwarf before. And then, we got home and I was like, well, why hasn't Daphne seen a woman who's a dwarf? That's on me. And we sat down and we watched a bunch of videos, with kind of this way that she could ask the natural questions a kid has. And we talked about, something we say a lot, in our family, everybody is different. And I discovered this one website, Special Books by Special Kids. Are you guys familiar with that?
Yeah.
Okay. So in some ways similar, a cousin to what your movement is. A former special ed teacher who interviews a number of people with different abilities all the time. And Daphne and I watched a ton of these videos. And I thought to myself, I want her to not be so sheltered. I want her to understand. I want her to, the next time she sees somebody who has, a different ability, I want her to just say hello and keep walking and not have it be that case. And that's definitely what happened, kids just need to be exposed to things. Sometimes, she's pretty intuitive now, Lou, right? Like sometimes she'll see, she can recognize, people who have, different communication styles, and just was sometimes like, oh, look, that guy's wheelchair is really cool. And that's her genuine response. And she keeps going. And of course, she sees kids like Cece a lot, she's been to her school and, kind of knows that world, spent a lot of time in Boston's Children's Hospital along with us, where, I saw more child-sized wheelchairs that year than I'd ever seen in my entire life, So Daphne's been really exposed, but a really interesting thing, kind of a strange irony. I started following Special Books by Special Kids on Facebook years ago. And then Cecily was diagnosed with Pitt Hopkins Syndrome. on a Friday in October. And I did that same thing where I kind of like retreated to the internet that weekend. I did a lot of Googling. I was just like gathering all the information I could. And they would post a video, usually like one new video a week. And on Sunday that week, Special Books by Special Kids, 2 days after I got my diagnosis, posted about a boy with Pitt Hopkins syndrome. And I was just blown away. It's the only one they've ever done. And it happened to be that weekend. So, I recommend sites like that. I recommend Go Shout Love. That's Stephanie introduced me to it, to parents, to be like, hey, this is a place for your kid to kind of have a safe place to ask hard questions. Cause those are hard questions for adults to ask. It's hard questions for kids to ask too. Why did this happen to this child? What is hard for them? What can they still do? What do they need my help doing? How do I help them along?
And I'm assuming that impact and that intentionality that came after that moment with Daphne there's probably been other ways in which she's grown and has maybe become a model for other kids that maybe in a different way that maybe haven't been exposed in the same ways that she has. Would that be true?
I hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Like, isn't this the movement we all want for our kids? More open-mindedness and being able to, kids don't understand the word intersectionality, but they're experiencing it. They understand that it can be hard to be different no matter what that is about you. How in some ways, there's a lot of factions of people who are, still living oppressed, marginal lives.
I think Daphne's going to be way ahead of the game on that one. Obviously, just from her personal experiences, she's oftentimes, I can overhear her explaining, what Pitt Hopkins is to her friends or to even adults who come in contact with Cece and don't quite understand what's happening with her, why she's not walking or talking. She's oftentimes the quickest one out of all of us to start explaining what Cece's all about, who she is.
So cool. It's mom, I'm sure both, but especially mom has modeled advocacy to the point where it's the natural thing. Like she's advocating and doesn't even know that word yet, but is doing it. That's really cool.
Well, we got to give Dad credit here too, though, because I'm just the one who never stops talking. He's living it. He's modeling it.
Yeah.
All of his things.
Yeah.
And and has too long before.
Yeah. So as we wrap up the conversation, one of the biggest takeaways and what we're all the sales during September, how those are going to be used, excuse me, are for not just a pet. We're looking for a dog for Cecily. And so tell us a little bit about how those funds are going to be used and how that will impact her day-to-day life.
This part is so exciting. We're receptive to feedback for those who are experts on this field, because I find that we're back and forth a lot between the therapy dog and the service dog. A service dog comes with a lot more kind of legal protections, also a little bit, I think, more expensive and a little bit of a longer wait list to get. And a therapy dog seems maybe the process a little quicker, a little more affordable, and maybe easier for others to interact with the dog. I'm not sure. We have to learn. But our goal is to get Cecily a dog. She is an animal lover. We have a cat. Cat's not quite as receptive to children trying to like climb all over them and love on up on them.
They kind of have a reputation for being antisocial. Yeah.
You just do what they want when they want. So, but when we see our neighbors have a dog and Cecily loves to just like nuzzle up in the belly. And, we haven't talked about, a number of the hard things with Pitt Hopkins, but one of them is I think she is prone to discomfort and she is prone to kind of bouts of anxiety a little bit. I think a dog would be really nice at helping her stay calm and centered. And I think it'd be nice at helping her connect with other kids. Sometimes kids don't know how to play with a child who does not walk or talk. But everybody knows how to play with a dog, right? And so it would become this nice kind of connecting point. I think it would really help with her relationships too.
Yeah. Awesome.
Lou?
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that angle until recently, and I think Cece having a dog with her almost at all times would be that point where kids would be more comfortable coming up and talking to her and to the dog, and certainly it would be a nice way to include her in more kids events and connecting with kids. Absolutely. But yeah, she's like Lizzie said, she's a big time animal lover. And it's really the best possible thing that we can think of to use any funds for. I think she would absolutely love it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, we are excited for the month, and we're excited to do as much as we can to rally that support for Cecily and for your family. And we hope, it's always our hope that the funds will be impactful and help the day-to-day life. But more than that, it's our goal that she and your entire family feel the love during the month. And so that's our goal.
That is our goal indeed. If you are not familiar with us at Go Shout Love, we do amazing things for amazing families with kids on rare medical journeys. Each month, we shout love for a feature family with creative apparel inspired by the kiddos. This month's Everyone Belongs t-shirt design is inspired by Cecily, a joyful and social 4-year-old girl from Saratoga Springs, New York. Every purchase in December will go towards finding Cecily a service or therapy dog. You can also start a subscription and shout love with us every month with each feature family. It's a tangible way to make a difference in our world, not only by supporting them, but your shirt will help tell a story at the same time. September is not over, so please share Cecily with your friends and family and let her impact grow. This journey doesn't stop here. Next month, we will have another feature family, so please stay tuned. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Go Shout Love, we're easy to find. And keep pace with us as we continue to go shout love.